If you love Paul Harvey stories and the rest of the story, subscribe now. The rest of the story. North of North. Some Native Americans believe there is a spirit that calls one from the safety of all he knows and beckons him deep into the wilderness. Author Algernon Blackwood personified that spirit in a short story called The Wendigo. And yet if there is such a lulling, alluring voice, it was probably heard by a man in Fairbanks, Alaska last spring. We're going to call him the Hiker because we don't know any other name than that. We're acquainted with him only in terms of what happened to him and what he did as described in his diary. There are no dates in the chronicle, only day numbers. Day 1 was probably sometime last April. It's marked by a simple 2-word entry, Exit Fairbanks. And thus began a real-life adventure such as most modern times can only imagine. The first 6 weeks of entries in the hiker's diary are more or less routine. On day 43, we are alarmed to learn that he, armed with nothing more formidable than a .22 rifle, has shot and killed a moose. Does that mean other sources of food have run out? The desperation of what he did is suggested by an entry 5 days later. I now wish I had never shot the moose, one of the greatest tragedies of my life. But the hiker's desperation had only begun. Soon chilling, cryptic entries began appearing in his diary. Lonely, scared. On day 100 the shocker made it, but in weakest condition of life. Death looms as serious threat. Too weak to walk out. Have literally become trapped in the wild. No game. He is now 100 miles from Fairbanks. We infer from his writing that he is injured, although how badly we cannot say. He is clearly still able to walk, however, for an entry 1 week later records that he has discovered beautiful blueberries. They are not, however, sufficient nourishment to sustain him. There is no entry in the hiker's diary past day 113. His body was found in a sleeping bag a week ago Sunday by hunters who had happened upon the remote camp. This note was found nearby. I've had a happy life and thank the Lord. Goodbye, and may God bless you all. He had been dead, it appears, since July. His body was removed to Fairbanks by helicopter. Someday, perhaps through dental records, the body will be identified. The body will be given a name and a history, and yet that name, even when we do learn it, will be no match for the metaphor of the hiker's last 100 days on Earth. For if ever someone was so near and yet so far, it was he. As best he could calculate, and he calculated correctly, he had wandered 100 miles from home deep into the unforgiving, relentless wilderness. And yet, as he could not have guessed, he laid himself to rest only a stone's throw